Welcome to the Anglo-Italian Pod Euro 2024 previews. And this time we are going for a team that's always described as the dark horse. Are they still dark horses? We're, of course, talking Turkey with Kaan Bayazit. I hope I said that right. How are we doing, man?
Doing great, Rory. How about yourself? How's the weather in
Yeah,
Milan?
yeah, all good, man. All good. Really genuinely getting excited for the Euros now. Now the Champions League and everything's out of the way. Like international football mode on. Are you excited for the tournament?
Yeah, I'm always excited for international tournaments. Really, it also makes the summer last less long, right? Because usually now we have like this long down period where we only get to see some friendly games, and having a World Cup or Euros to fill up one of those months is great. I think.
Well, absolutely. I'm already bored of seeing Fabrizio Romano and looking for transfer gossip. So I'm glad there's actually going to be matches to look at and concentrate on. But let's start with this is the second nation we are doing who has an Italian man, an Italian legend of the game in charge in Vincenzo Montella. So can't tell us what's the general perception of Montella at the moment. He came in kind of fairly rushed in, got you qualified. What are the perceptions of him?
Well, I mean, he was obviously working at Adana Demirspor before he took the Turkey job. That's how he basically got in to the position to take the job. He did a decent job at Adana Demirspor. Um, didn't manage to get them into Europe, but did very well. Had a good team there, though, to be fair. Mario Balotelli, Yunus Belhanda, Jonas Svensson, lots of good players. But he did a good job there, and obviously results weren't going great for Turkey. The football wasn't great for Turkey under the previous manager. So when he got sacked, Vincenzo Montella was moved into that spot, and he managed to qualify them for the Euros, kind of against expectation. I think the general consensus was we'll probably miss out on this tournament, as we have missed out on so many before because the qualifiers really weren't looking too good, and especially the football that was being played under Stefan Kuntz wasn't exactly something to give much hope. So when Montella came in and actually turned things around and got Turkey qualified, there was a lot of positive energy heading towards into the Euros as well. But then this last spell of friendlies has kind of been overshadowed by a little bit of a controversy surrounding one of Turkey's brightest young stars, Simi Kılıçsoy from Besiktas. He was called up to the national team, got his first ever call up, and then without any warning was just sent down to the under 21s. The player wasn't told anything.
Oh, wow.
His club wasn't told anything. So yeah, there's lots of rumor and speculation about what the reason behind it might be. But that really got a lot of people upset, including, of course, at his club, Besiktas, and also him himself, because he's been having a great season. He's scored 12 goals and given a further 4 assists. He's essentially only played about 6 months of football because early in the season he wasn't playing. So he's really the next big thing coming up in Turkish football after Arda Güler, of course, last season. Also from 2005, only just turned 18 at the start of the season, so he's really a hot prospect. And there was some controversy with that, and then of course the friendlies didn't go well. Lost them both. No, drew the first one, I believe, and then lost the second one quite heavily. So yeah, the positive energy going in towards the Euros, I wouldn't say it's lost, but there's definitely some negativity now because of those results. Obviously, there is friendlies, but still, the politics in the selection procedure are being questioned. Also, if you now look at the selection that Turkey has put out, there's some questionable decisions, some questionable omissions, and especially some questionable inclusions as well.
Well, before we get on to the squad, because I did notice some big names were kind of missing. What has Montella changed in terms of the football? Has he tried to make it a bit more progressive? Is he a bit more attacking? What changes did he implement?
I think he's got more. He's playing Hakan Çalhanoğlu more in his natural role, that he has been playing in at Inter Milan now.
Hmm.
I think in the past we've always seen them kind of shoehorn Hakan Çalhanoğlu in, never really playing him as a 10. Now, of course, at Inter he's playing more as a deep line playmaker almost. And in Turkey, for some reason, they insisted on putting him on the wings for years now, and that's something that just hasn't worked. I personally think Hakan Çalhanoğlu has been pretty poor for the national team for many, many years. Now he's being utilized better. I think that definitely is a change, a positive change under Montella. But other than that, apart from him having some of his personal favorites, like for example Samet Akaydın, from who was a former Adana Demirspor player who played for him, but is generally considered to be a very poor defender. Got transferred to Fenerbahce, but just bombed there completely. Then went to Panathinaikos in January, did the same thing there, bombed completely. Him being included is quite kind of questionable, and there's some speculation whether that has to do with some agent involvement and that kind of stuff. But what he's changed, I mean, yeah, he's gotten the results so far. But yeah, it's hard to say. I'm personally not super positive about it.
Okay, yeah.
Obviously, I'm positive about qualifying for the Euros, but I'm not sure what to expect for the Euros. I definitely don't think Turkey are a dark horse. Okay. Maybe if there wasn't so much politics involved behind the scenes, and this has been the case forever, right? Like this isn't just new with Montella. Guus Hiddink had the same things, the same problems. Obviously, Stefan Kuntz, all the Turkish coaches in the past. Like there feels like there's always some sort of invisible hand that's pulling the strings behind the scenes, having a certain input in the selection procedure and that kind of stuff. So that is something that over the last couple of years, I feel like the public has got more and more clued in on. Like they've started noticing it more. Whereas I think in the past, obviously that has to do with social media and people speculating on there and putting their tinfoil hats on. But definitely in the past, that wasn't so much the case, even though it was pretty obvious at times.
Nice. Well, let's move on to the squad. And you said there was a few selection issues within the squad. I think if we start at the back, I find the goalkeeper position quite interesting to start with, because obviously Bayindir has been struggling for minutes at Manchester United, not really had much of a season. But Mert Gunok at Besiktas has had a fairly solid season. Is there a selection headache there for Montella in terms of who starts in goal?
I don't think so, in particular because Uğurcan Çakır from Trabzonspor hasn't had a particularly good season. As you say, Altay Bayindir hasn't played at Manchester United. I mean, it's a questionable career move on his part. I mean, obviously, going to Manchester United is massive for any player, and I think that's kind of why he did it. But essentially, he went there to sit on the bench, and he knew that going in. So it's a really weird career choice, I think, for somebody in his mid-20s. But yeah, obviously you'd expect that he'd go for the man who has played most minutes and has performed best, and that would be Mert Gunok. But also Doğan Alemdar is in the squad right now, although he did play for the under 21s yesterday, so I suspect he'll be one of the names dropped for the final 26 roster. I believe Mert Gunok is probably going to get the nod. He was also instrumental in Turkey's last qualification campaign, and they have changed a lot. Altay Bayindir and Uğurcan Çakır have been had a really good season 2 seasons ago, and they were both really vying for that spot, but then they kind of dropped off last season, both of them, and Mert has kind of retaken that position in goal.
Nice. And moving to the defence, a big name who's missing out is Çağlar Soyuncu, who, of course, we'll know from Premier League fans will know from his Leicester time. He's missing out on the squad due to injury. How is Montella going to get past this? Because I think he's a big player within the squad, right?
That's really tough, I think, because he went to Fenerbahce in January on loan from Atletico Madrid, and they paid €2 million for him to loan him. with no option to buy or anything. So really just he went to Fenerbahce because they were struggling with injuries at the back and really needed some reinforcements at the back. So they got both Çağlar Soyuncu and Leonardo Bonucci. And he went there for minutes, essentially, because he wasn't getting any at Atletico Madrid. And he played most of the games in the second half of the season. Even scored the winning goal in the derby against Galatasaray a couple of weeks ago, and then he just got injured in training earlier last week. And yeah, he's out, and it's a massive blow for Turkey because obviously a couple of years ago they had the tandem Çağlar Soyuncu, Merih Demiral. Merih Demiral at the time was doing great in Italy. But he has dropped off tremendously after his ACL injury. He's also gone to the Saudi Pro League now, but he just hasn't been the same. He is he's still only 26 or 27 years old, but that ACL injury, he just hasn't come back from it. And not everyone comes back from an ACL injury, the same player, and he certainly hasn't. So that really stalwart-looking defense a couple of years ago for Turkey, which is really what got them to the last tournament, last Euros, I should say. A very young, promising duo with Çağlar Soyuncu and Merih Demiral, who were in their very early 20s back then. Yeah, that just hasn't remained. We also had Ozan Kabak at the time. It was coming up. His career has gone up and down a little bit. Had a small spell at Liverpool, of course, but they never decided to make that deal permanent. Went back to Germany. He's doing well in Germany, but he's playing for a smaller team, Hoffenheim, I believe. Yeah. So yeah, it's a big blow. Çağlar Soyuncu, one of the two big defensive names at the back, and he's the only one that's really still playing at a somewhat decent level. Although, for those of you who, of course, follow Leicester, you'll have noticed his drop-off. And then, of course, he went to Atletico, couldn't establish himself there. So his career has been a downward trajectory as well. So Turkey's back line looks a little bit vulnerable, to say the least, I would say. So at the center, obviously, with Çağlar gone now, the question is who's going to play there. Merih Demiral, there's that Samet Akaydin guy I mentioned earlier. There's Abdülkerim Bardakçı from Galatasaray, who's been really solid. So he'll probably play, but then the question is going to be who's going to be his partner. Maybe they'll go for Kaan Ayhan, who's been playing the season as at right back at Galatasaray. He's also capable of playing in the center, so I could see him playing. But I don't think the defense will be as stable. And to add to that as well, for some reason, Montella decided not to include a single left-footed wingback or fullback. So Ferdi Kadıoğlu, who plays left back for Fenerbahce, is actually right-footed, and he can play both positions. Obviously, he actually started his career more as a number 10 at NEC Nijmegen in the Netherlands. So he has been transformed into a fullback. He's very highly rated. Also followed by some major clubs in Europe right now. But let's say he gets a suspension or an injury, then Turkey legitimately don't have a proper option at left back. The only thing they have is Cenk Özkaçar, who plays for Valencia, but he's a central defender and he's played at left back for Turkey. And let me tell you, he is not capable of playing that position. That is just not something he's cut out for. And it's puzzling because you do have options like, for example, Ridvan Yilmaz, who plays for the Glasgow Rangers. He's a perfectly capable fullback. He's actually really good if he can stay healthy. His main issue in his career has been injury so far. And I think if there's any Rangers fans watching this, they'll probably agree that he is a very decent fullback. And he's not even been included in the squad. There's some young and upcoming guys like Yasin Özcan from Kasımpaşa. He's just turned 18 a couple of weeks ago, like 2-3 weeks ago, and he's already got 60 or so Super League games under his belt. Wow. So he essentially made his debut at like 16 as a really hot prospect, plays for the under 21s as well. And he didn't get a call up. So that's, I mean, when you are that thinly manned at left back, I do find it quite questionable that you don't call up a single option there. And then at right back,
Oh,
Yeah, go
sorry.
ahead. Sorry.
No, that does seem incredibly strange. But just, I'm going to push you just a little bit for. Obviously, there's players that we're aware of within Serie A. Yildiz, absolutely incredible season for Juventus this year. Really
Yeah.
caught the eye a lot. Of course, Arda Güler has had a difficult season through injuries, but won the Champions League, so not a bad season for him. Who are the players that we should be looking out for and getting excited about within this Turkey squad beyond Çalhanoğlu, right?
But those are the obvious two, right?
Mm-hmm.
Arda Güler is an incredible talent. He is, yeah. It's very hard to describe how big of a talent he really is. I think that's Martin Odegaard level of caliber. Yeah, he has struggled earlier in the season with injuries, but then in the second half of the season, he's gotten fit again. He's been getting more and more minutes. And despite, he hasn't gotten that many minutes, but he has made most of the minutes he's gotten. He's been scoring a lot of goals. And I do think that Real Madrid and Carlo Ancelotti are starting to warm up to him quite a bit. And I think hopefully for him next season, he'll play a bigger part. Although, of course, with the arrivals of Mbappe and Endrick, that won't become any easier. Competition was already very, very difficult for those offensive positions, and those won't get any easier. But he is technically a number 10, so maybe he'll find his way in, because most of those big talents they've got with Vini Jr., Rodrigo, and Endrick, of course, coming in, Mbappe coming in, those are more forwards rather than somebody to play behind the striker. So perhaps with Toni Kroos's departure, Ancelotti will change his midfield around a little bit, play with a number 10. I don't know. Hopefully for Arda, he will do that. I don't know if he will. But obviously, he's the big poster boy of Turkish football right now. I think it's moving away from Hakan Çalhanoğlu more towards Arda Güler. And rightfully so. Arda, of course, 19 years old, has a very bright future ahead of him as long as he can stay clear of injuries. And then, of course, Kenan Yildiz is a massive talent in his own right as well. So those two are the big two to look forward to. And then the kid I mentioned earlier, Semih Kılıçsoy, who is also a massive, massive talent, also just 18 years old. He's a striker. He's been playing mostly on the wings for Besiktas this season because they had a little bit of an issue on the wings. They didn't really have many options there. So they played him mostly on the left or on the right. But like I said, he's had a good season. I think he's played 23 league games and he scored 11 goals and provided the further 4 assists. And then really early on in the season, he scored a goal in the Conference League qualifiers against Tirana as well. So 12 goals, 4 assists. He is actually the top scorer of the team this season. Just to illustrate, they had a pretty poor season, other than winning the Turkish Cup. But he actually didn't. He actually only featured a few minutes in the Turkish Cup final because he had a minor injury and they didn't want to risk his Euros, obviously. So those 3, and then there's also the kid from Nuremberg, Can Uzun, who has 16 goals in the second Bundesliga in 30 appearances, and I think he has a further, I want to say, 2 assists. So he can play both as a striker or behind the striker. So there's a lot of really exciting young talent up top with Arda Güler, Kenan Yildiz, Can Uzun, and Semih Kılıçsoy. And with Enes Ünal also having to pull out due to an injury, the likelihood of Semih Kılıçsoy playing becomes a lot bigger as well. So we might be able to see some of those kids in that. Well, I really hope we do, because obviously those are all from the 2005 generation. So yeah, very exciting times.
That does make me feel old, the 2005 generation. But let's move on to the final question. How far will you go? So how far do you think Turkey can go, and what would count as a successful tournament for Turkey?
I mean, the last tournament was really bad, right? So I think anything, getting out of the groups, I would say would be a pretty big success already. Obviously, there's a lot of exciting young players up top, but like I said, I think at the back there's some issues. I even forgot to mention Orkun Kökçü as well, who's a massive talent too. Of course, plays for Benfica. In midfield and up top, there's some really exciting players. Ferdi Kadiolu is a really exciting player, but all in all, I think that Turkey will struggle. I think
Mhm.
getting out of the groups will be a big success, and I wouldn't expect them to go too far. But you never know, right? Turkey have surprised in the past. I mean, in 2008, I, I think nobody expected them to go to the semis, and they did. And then, of course, in 2002, they also went to the semis and won
Yeah.
the little final
Yeah,
against
yeah, yeah.
South Korea. But that was the golden generation.
Mhm.
I think we were labeling them a few years ago with Meri Demiral, with Çağlar and all that coming up. I think we were kind of labeling it as the second coming of a golden generation, but hasn't quite panned out that way. So we'll have to be remain humble and hopefully get out of the groups.
Well, it's an interesting group. I think it's a finely poised group beyond Portugal, whose squad looked terrifying. Obviously, it's Turkey, Georgia, and Czechia. I think all three of those teams have a chance of grabbing that second spot, I think. But Kaan, thank you for coming on. It's been a pleasure. When our viewers and listeners want to find you, where can they find your stuff online?
Oh, well, they can follow me on Twitter or X as they call it nowadays at Razerian, Razzerian, or they can actually find the Black Eagles podcast on YouTube. It's a show I present with my friends Sinan Schwarding and Kartal Oer every week or so, and we talk mainly about the ins and outs of Besiktas. And we also have a YouTube show, and it's also a podcast that's available on Apple Podcast, Spotify, all those platforms, obviously. But we've recently switched to video, and people have seemed to be liking it.
Nice. Good stuff. Well, guys, thanks for joining us. Kaan, thanks for joining us. We will have you on again during the tournament when Turkey storm through the group stage and get into the knockout rounds, right? We will have you back on. Guys, as always, hit the like and subscribe button down here. You can find us on Twitter at Italian Anglo Pod, on Instagram and TikTok at Anglo-Italian Pod. And we will see you next time for the next episode of our Euro 2024 previews. Ciao, alla prossima.